All right, folks, welcome to the fun half. Let's go right to the phones. Calling from a 510 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name's Thomas. I'm calling from Los Angeles.
Thomas from Los Angeles. What's on your mind, Thomas?
Well, I just want to say that I did not expect myself to be calling in and agree with so much of what you said on the show so far, but I'm an anarcho-capitalist, and I'm calling in to debate with you because I feel that taxation is theft and governments are inherently immoral.
Hi.
And the reason that I initially went down this road was from an anti-war perspective.
Okay, well, how does taxation being theft, why is that necessary to believe to be anti-war?
Because taxation is used to pay for war. The income tax first started to fund war.
Okay, and do they have to? I mean, they also pay for other things too, right? I mean, they don't have to. That's just a decision that we as a people allow to happen.
Well, I mean, I'm not necessarily. Are you allowing the war or the stuff that's going on in Iran and Iraq right now to happen? Are you allowing that?
Well, no, but I'm also not allowing stock buybacks either, and that's happening. I mean,
what's wrong with stock buybacks?
What's wrong with stock buybacks? It is a manipulation of the stock market. I mean, to the extent that it used to be illegal, so much so 40 years ago, prior to 40 years ago.
I mean, without using, appeals to authority like something being legal or illegal, what's immoral about a company buying pieces of their own company back?
What's immoral about it? Well, a company only. What is a company? What defines a company?
A group of people, putting together and providing goods and services for society.
No. What's a company? What do you need to be a company? To be incorporated?
Oh, well, that's a government enforced thing. I mean,
correct.
The idea of incorporation only exists as a legal shield of liability for the business owners to prevent them from, having their own assets seized in the case of bankruptcy or things like that.
Correct.
A corporation is inherently government agreement. Corporations are protected by government. You remove government, corporations don't exist. You just have people providing voluntary goods and services to the society.
Correct. And, of course, you wouldn't have a stock market, right? I mean, how would you enforce that? How would you enforce the contracts that are involved in a stock market?
Well, we would be getting into theoretical territory because something like this hasn't ever existed, but you could certainly provide, a dispute resolution organization, for example, if there is a demand.
What would be their source of authority?
The market.
The market would be the source of authority for a dispute resolution? How does that work? Like, you mean like for instance, we're going to give you, we're going to rate your bonds AAA. And why do we do that? Because we get our business from you. Everything will go perfectly. But don't worry about your derivative mortgage bonds because we've marked them AAA. That must mean they're great, right?
Well, that would work in the short term, certainly. But in the long term, you're going to lose trust as an organization, and people will no longer trust that rating agency to provide valid ratings for
Really?
And so a competitor can...
What are the name of the trading... Really? If that's the case, what are the name of the ratings agencies today? Are they any different than they were in 2006?
I couldn't tell you.
Well, I can tell you. They're not. And because your entire theory went out the window. Because they all rated...
Like, what does the government have to do with J.D. Power and Associates?
J.D. Power and Associates is not a bond rating agency. Listen, the bond rating. Listen, let me tell you a little story because I have a feeling that you're probably not old enough to remember this. And I'm not appealing to authority. I'm just telling you. Prior to 2008, when we had a massive financial crisis that caused the immiseration of millions of people and the loss of houses, right? You'll recall all the rating agencies were rating these bonds that were being sold as AAA bonds because they were so sound, that they were so sure to pay off, and they were
and
garbage.
What repercussions did they face for this fraud?
Virtually none.
Right, because the government is complicit in all of it.
Okay.
The government, there was an attempt, the government, to decouple and to put restrictions on these agencies, but the corporate forces pushed back on it.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, Google Al Franken and bond rating agencies, and whether or not they should be able to be paid by their clients.
I mean,
that's the system you're suggesting, right? You're suggesting that the market actually pay for the arbitrators of what they're doing, whether it's a bond rating agency or whether it's dispute resolution or whatnot. And I would posit to you that there's about a half a dozen ways in which that goes sideways. One is that they don't have a monopoly of force, therefore no one listens to them. Or they're being paid by the people they're supposed to regulate, and they don't regulate properly because it's not in their financial interest to do so.
Why are those the only two options? Why couldn't it be that me, as an investor, I hire a completely independent rating agency to look at somebody's books before I make an investment?
Oh, you can have an auditor do that, and then I can have an auditor do that. But what if that company also? Well, excuse me. Let me finish. What agency would you? Let's just do hypothetical. ABC Accounting, right? Well, guess what, dude? I'm a company. You're just an investor. I hire ABC Accounting to do my books. Bingo.
But why is ABC the only company? I mean, in a free market, there'd be ABC, there'd be DEF, there'd be GHI, there'd be JKL.
Do they have to disclose to you who their other clients are?
I mean, if if they want my business, then they would be wise to disclose all.
What if they don't? How would you know?
Let me finish now. The companies that want my business would be as open as possible. They would have open books and say, these are our clients. This is who we pay for. Like, if they want my money as an investor, that's who I'm going to go with.
I got news for you. Me as a major corporation, I'm not going to hire ABC auditing if they're going to tell you who that they represent me. I would like a little client privilege. I would like a little bit of.
Is going to be the one that to go to.
I mean, and how do you know that they're actually? Are you saying there has to be a governmental law that they have to be transparent, or do you just guess that they're being transparent?
The market demands that they be transparent, and so if that is a market demand, then companies that want to make money.
What is the market? What do you mean the market demands? What does that mean? The market demands.
Market demand means that's what investors want. You're the market. I'm the market. Everybody is the market. Combined, we become the market. If the market wants, meaning you, me, any investor wants to invest in a company, then you can pick.
How does the market know that you're being? How does the market know that?
What? Go ahead.
How does the market, you, me, everybody? How do we know that? How do we know the company's telling us who all their clients are? They have no legal obligation to do so, correct?
Trust is huge. You know, how do you know that when you buy a package from Amazon, it's going to come delivered to your house and they're not just going to keep the money? That's how they stay in business long term.
Well, it's also illegal for them to do that.
It's good for them to build up trust with the community and have their ratings actually be worth something and not dog shit like government ratings. Right.
So according to you, that companies never do stuff that, like, for instance, like, you would never see a situation where, I don't know, somebody says, hey, this new form of opioids is not addictive, so you should prescribe it.
Well, I mean, you'd have to be a moron to believe it.
Do you know how many tens of thousands of people die each year now because they became addicted to that? Because doctors because the distribution.
Do you have any idea how many morons die each year from self-inflicting, poison into their veins? Yeah, okay. I'm well aware.
Are you aware? So, how many morons would you say make up our society?
How many morons?
Oh, a lot. That's why democracy is inherently immoral. Democracy is mob rule. I don't want to be ruled by morons.
I see.
People shouldn't even be allowed to vote. That's why I'm an
Who
animal.
gets to choose who's the moron?
But you choose for yourself. I choose for myself. No, I don't choose for you. You know, you don't let morons rule your life. You rule your own life.
So
I have a moron. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to say one thing. I don't normally do this anymore. But right now I have a moron and a chief moron enabler ruling my life.
Well, there you go. I'm not going to defend Trump in this conversation.
I don't think that's what he meant.
Oh, well, if you're calling me a moron, then that's not an argument, because you fail to realize that I can be a moron and completely correct. Maybe I am a moron, but that doesn't make me wrong. If you want to tell me why I'm wrong, you have to make an actual argument.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you may be right that the vast majority of people in our society are morons, and that you think it's okay that by nature of them being morons, that they should be subject to things like addictive substances that end up killing them because they're
prescribed by their doctor.
that are prescribed by their doctor, by their doctor. Huh?
They're subjecting themselves to it.
So how many have you ever been to? Have you ever do you have a disease? Have you ever had to go and rely on a doctor for serious medical advice?
No, I take good care of myself. I don't have.
How old are you?
I'm not.
How old are you?
I go jogging. I exercise.
How old are you?
My health care costs are effectively zero.
How old are you?
I am 32.
Okay. Now I got some bad news for you, Chief. As someone who's about 20 some odd years older than you are, it's coming. And you're going to go to your doctor, whether it's for whatever it is. Like, I mean,
the vast majority of healthcare costs are preventable. The leading cause of death in America is heart disease. It's perfectly preventable. I go jogging. I'm not going to have heart disease.
Okay.
Tell me, what am I going to suffer from when I get older?
Great. You're not going to have heart disease. Congratulations.
Why do you put me in a position like, yes, exercise and diet are very good and very important, and we should create a social system where everybody, including people like yourself, morons, can access those things. But, dude, you are not going to live. You're not going to be immortal because you eat a carrot. You know that, right?
Certainly. But I can absolutely extend my life and the quality of it.
So, but I think what Sam is saying is that at some
unless you
point,
have a genetic predisposition to cancer,
right,
and something like that. Now, presumably, I got a little hypothetical for you. You have cancer. You have cancer because you are genetically predisposed now to cancer. And you go in to see your doctor, and your doctor says, I suggest that you do X, Y, or Z. And you say, well, I'm not a moron. I'm going to get a second opinion. And that doctor says, you should do TWX. And so you're like, well, they both said X. Do you really have the ability to assess, though, what's happening? I mean, we had doctors all across the country who were prescribing this for this medication for stuff that ultimately we found that they shouldn't. That the corporation absolutely knew was an addictive, far more addictive substance than they were suggesting to the doctors, that they were gaming research. We had an FDA that is not equipped and should be strengthened, and we should have stronger laws. We had we had a regulatory system which obligated the distributors of these drugs to report on spikes that they see in the way that this was being prescribed. But because corporations have cut away and eat away, and people are against government, excuse me, I'm not done. Because people like yourself think that it's unjust for a regulatory agency to tell a distributor how to do their business, we have weakened laws that did not allow for that reporting. So we didn't find out until way too late that, a town of 200 people are getting 1 million, Oxycontins. And that's almost a literal figure. being sold to them over the course of a couple of years. I mean, so now I know there's a ton of morons out there. But guess what? They live amongst us. So what do we do in a society where we have all these morons? Do we just wait for them to all die?
No, we remove their power altogether.
And so what, should we just use them for energy? Should we just like put them into some type of situation where we can suck their life force and use them for spare parts?
I don't follow. I mean, why should I be responsible for what they choose to put in their body?
Right. Well, I guess I guess
that we burn their bodies for fuel or anything. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, that's their problem.
I see. All right.
I'm not going to get addicted to something that's an opiate. I'm not going to take that and put that in my body.
Okay. And you're sure you're not eating anything that's carcinogenic? How do you know this?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that I don't. I've eaten some junk in my life.
Right. But what are you defining as junk? How do you know these things about nutrition?
Well, I mean, it's just basic evolution,
No, basic evolution? Well, obviously it can't be basic evolution.
We evolved to eat certain things, like fruit. The reason fruit tastes good to us is because it has a source of nutrition that our body evolved to enjoy the taste of. Cats don't enjoy the taste of fruit. Cats are carnivores. They enjoy the taste of meat. Humans are omnivores. We can eat anything.
Right. Well, I mean, but my point is, how do you know about nutrition?
Well, I'm not a nutritionist, but I mean, I know that fruits and vegetables are good for you.
Why?
You got to get protein.
Why? Because they're sweet?
Protein.
You know they're good for you because they're sweet?
Well, corporations will abuse our body's taste for salt, sugar, and fat, three things that our bodies require nutritionally.
How do you know that our bodies require that nutritionally?
And corporations.
How do you know that our bodies require that nutritionally?
Let me finish. That corporations hack these necessary.
No, I know this. I know what you're saying. My audience knows this. They're not morons. But I'm asking you a question. How do you know what constitutes good nutrition?
Well, I guess I would have to talk to a nutritionist to know exactly.
How does the nutritionist know what constitutes good nutrition?
With oatmeal and almond milk, that's a healthy breakfast.
Listen. Maybe I am talking to one of those morons. I want you to listen to my question.
Well, that's not an argument.
Where does what we know about nutrition, where does that come from?
People who study the biological and chemical makeup of.
Where has the funding for the vast majority of that work come from?
Just because slaves grew all the cotton doesn't mean that cotton can't be grown without slaves. Like, you're making an argument that the government pays for these organizations to provide health and nutrition guidelines, but are you, like, I'm the moron here, but you fail to realize
cotton is a commodity what is the commodification of nutritional information? What is the broad? Cotton was a commodity such that it drove the economy of the world. How much of a market do you think there was 50 years ago for nutrition and even things like awareness about what cigarettes do to you?
Well, people who care, made it a point to find out.
People who care made it a point to find out? So you're suggesting that you would have the ability to do massive nutritional studies 50 years ago as a 32-year-old making whatever you're making today, that you would dedicate millions of dollars of your own money to finding that out? Or would you just rely on a fad diet book?
I mean, that's essentially what Tim Ferriss did. He's not a government agency. I mean, what's to stop anybody from doing this?
You don't think Tim Ferriss has based his research? You don't think Tim Ferriss bases experiments on the foundation of literally millions upon millions of dollars of government research that fund a huge percentage of his guests, frankly, on his show?
Well, why couldn't anybody else provide that research? Why can't people voluntarily provide these things?
Who?
Why does it have to be sourced from stolen money?
Why didn't they?
because the government steals money and does it. It's hard to compete with that. It's not a free market. If it was a free market, then
if it was a free market, everybody would be eating like a paleo diet or an Atkins diet or the Hollywood diet. And that's what we would learn everything our nutrition from. Although, of course, a lot of that is based upon governmental work, too.
Well, right. It's hard to compete with, somebody who goes around stealing money from people. In a free market, if the market has a demand for this service,
I've been doing the Bonanno family diet. It's Mediterranean based. They stole the money from bookies for the research.
I mean, look, I follow his argument in this very isolated part of the debate, right? Like it's kind of like when people say to me, oh, you're against capitalism and yet you have a phone and that was created by capitalism.
Absolutely.
Like that's the dominant mode of
it's the
production.
same
That's how
argument.
we make things right now.
The same argument.
That doesn't mean that we could not also produce phones under a different mode of production called communism.
Well, we could produce that would involve a lot of taxation. So let me ask you this. What does the word steal mean?
To take something involuntarily.
Without legal right or permission. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, that's the dictionary definition. I know where you're going with that.
Oh, okay. What is the definition that you have in your own particular language?
Say that again? I didn't hear you.
Do we have to all subscribe to your language, or are you just going to go by what the dictionary means?
I have my own language credit agency.
I mean, you're using the word steal because you want to say that the government is taking the money from me, you personally, and don't like it.
Take it right out of my paycheck. I don't hand it over to them.
Right. I understand how taxation works.
If I pull money out of somebody else's paycheck, it would be stealing. But if the government does it, then it's not stealing all of a sudden.
That's correct.
You're not a representative governing body.
That's correct. That's correct. There are two different things. Government is different from you.
Why is the government different from me?
Because
what special are they magic? Is the government a magical entity that has different rights than I do?
Am I magical? Because I'm also different from you.
Well, you are your own person, but the government is magic because you can't steal from anybody either. If you stole from your neighbor, the government
is
can steal from you and your neighbor.
The government.
You're not magic. The government is magic.
Society has organized in such a way where they feel that the only competent way and efficient way to help as many people in society as possible is to designate an authority that we limit in terms of what they can do. We limit through what we call civil liberties. There are limitations that are built into the Constitution. There are mechanisms for the people to limit the government's authority. Happens all the time.
How good is that Constitution working out in Iran right now?
In Iran?
Yeah, the Iranian situation. How's that Constitution working out for that?
How's the Constitution working out? How's our Constitution working for it?
Yeah.
We're not.
Like congressional approval, like the Constitution says we're supposed to?
No, I agree. There needs to be congressional approval for it.
Nobody's obligated to follow anything on it.
So
what's anybody going to do? It's just ink on paper.
Well,
that can't be the place that we draw. That's an appeal to authority. You have to make an argument from first principles.
So you're saying that logic from first principles. If I make a logical argument, then Donald Trump won't bomb Iran.
Wait, say that again?
If I make a logical argument, then Donald Trump won't bomb Iran. Is that what you're saying?
No, unless Iran personally attacked us on our homeland, then there is no reason to attack Iran.
I agree.
Wait, we want to talk
That's just an opinion. It's your opinion. It's my opinion, too.
I have my own credit agency.
We want to talk about first principles. I would like to know that you and I are operating within the same ethical framework. And the way you seem to think about other human beings does not convince me that we are. I believe that we have a collective responsibility to everyone in society, and that none of us are free until all of us are free. And we have a responsibility to provide a decent life for everyone.
Why do I have a responsibility to provide a decent life for somebody who's 400 pounds overweight on diabetes medication, can't even walk? Why is that my responsibility?
For the same reason I have to listen to you on this call, because
we're all in this together.
Let me just explain how arbitrary your perspective
Call
is.
JD Powers
I mean, Jamie's is arbitrary.
No,
it's arbitrary. It is arbitrary. Jamie's is arbitrary, but yours is arbitrary. Why can't I come hold on? Why can't I come? Why can't I come and blow your face off?
Because that would be a violation of my property rights.
But dude, why do I care about your property rights? That's not part of my first principle. My first principle says your property rights don't count for crap. My first principles in this universe that we're talking about, this hypothetical, that anybody I think is a moron, I can blow their face off with a gun.
So you're advocating slavery and might makes right.
I'm advocating might makes right. Yeah. In this hypothetical. In this hypothetical.
You're a slaver. That's
I'm a slaver.
Good argument.
I'm a slaver. I'm
arguing from property rights.
What?
Everybody has an individual.
Wait. You're arguing
right
for property rights, and you're calling me a slaver? I got some bad news for you, buddy. I get some very bad news for you about what slaveholders thought. But be that as it may, my point is that what you're taking is an arbitrary position, and I'm suggesting
my position is not arbitrary.
Yes, it is. You've just decided what your first principles are, but they're arbitrary. They didn't come from God. They're not etched in stone.
You don't know what my first principles are.
It doesn't matter what they are.
Well,
all first principles are arbitrary.
If you don't even know what they are, and it doesn't matter what they are, you're not making any argument.
All first principles are arbitrary.
No, they're not.
Of course they are.
Is gravity arbitrary?
Gravity is not a principle. It is a physical trait.
First principles comes from physics.
Okay, what's the physics?
What's your first principle then?
You can apply it to
What's your
philosophy.
first principle?
Well, first principles is just working out things.
What is the scientific basis for your first principle?
Do they exist somewhere out in space?
Wait, I just want to hear this. I want to hear, what is the scientific, that in the absence of man, right? Because you're talking about a physical property. In the absence of man, tell me about your first principles.
Yeah, the place that I am arguing that rights come from is what you're born with. You are born.
I just said you're talking about physics to me. You said that they're physics. You just compared your first principles to gravity. And I want to know, in the absence of man, of humanity, what first principles exist that you're talking about?
Yeah, what scientific instruments can you use?
Wait. Okay, hold on. Let me repeat the question, because every time I finish it, what first principle exists in the absence of man? Like gravity.
Property. You have a right to.
How can property exist if it is a relationship between the physical world and man? How can that exist before man exists?
Animals have property rights too.
All right, then animals. Let's say animals don't exist.
Yeah, that's why I'm a vegan.
There it is.
Don't vegetables have property rights?
Ziv's head just exploded.
Why would vegetables have property rights?
They're alive. They exist.
No, actually, I actually have a very. Oh my God, I'm in this.
How can they exist?
I'll explain precisely. No, look at what the Jains say. They have a more coherent worldview than you do. They don't eat food that does not. They only eat. Some of them only eat fruits or nuts because they fall from the trees. They aren't picked, and they wear surgical masks so they don't accidentally breathe in bugs. So you're basically genocidal. You're committing genocide right now. Do you have a surgical mask on? Do you have a surgical mask on? Do you have a surgical mask on? You're violating the property rights of bugs, and I demand that this call end because I'm losing my property rights. right now.
I realize that it's
Because Sam is a slaver.
I will let you have the final say.
I'm not really able to get a word in edgewise in any of this.
Because you can't answer it.
Right.
Because you're violating my
You guys
property
want a
rights.
conversation, I would love to provide it, but nobody's allowing
here's
me
the
to
last.
make any arguments.
You have the last word. Last word.
Crapping all over me.
Last word. Last word.
All right. Taxation is theft. The government is inherently evil and immoral.
Okay. Thank you for the call.
Wow, what a perfect synthesis of all the debates that we like
We're
to
wrapped
have.
up. We really rolled this week into a.
Did you know gravity is like saying taxation is theft?
I did not.
That's what they're trying to find out at CERN with the Higgs
right.
boson. The Higgs boson is a very possessive subparticle, subatomic particle.
You know, I
gotta do
was
the
talking on
post-roll.
Twitter with somebody last night who's a vegan and an animal lover and a lover of humanity. And they said that they're convinced that having compassion for animals can teach people to have compassion for other people.
I think that's true.
think what this caller shows us is not necessarily.
That's true too.
I think what these vegan callers are
All right, hold on.
showing is that
let me
there's
just
essential
do this.
nutrients that
Let
we're
me just
losing.
do this post roll.